Hi there, this is Blair McNea and welcome to the first of a series of videos that we're going to be doing about a natural path or a natural trail to recover when you've had trauma in your life. It's an issue that's really a big issue for my wife and I. It's something that we really have a heart for. We went through a ton of trauma over the last couple of years, and it had to do with us losing our business, our home, having terrible financial consequences, and then on top of all of that, her father went through a terminal brain tumor. And so when we were going through all of that, the thing that really kind of struck us is that there really isn't a path, there isn't a known kind of way to deal with trauma, to kind of go out and follow a path, a methodical way to deal with trauma and get trauma out of your life. And so I did, like anytime I face a problem, I always go out and I read a ton, I research it, and we did a ton of research, and what we learned is that there is indeed a very refined path that you can follow to deal with trauma. And that's a natural path. It's a very natural path of working with and dealing with and coming to grips with all the ways that trauma has affected your life. So first of all, let's talk about trauma. What causes trauma? Trauma is caused by something that's so dramatic in your life and so intense, and there's such a great loss that it immediately kind of programs your body and your mind for something awful happening. So things that cause trauma: car accidents, divorces, losing somebody close to you, having them die, having somebody being diagnosed with a serious illness or a disease, witnessing some violent acts, being at war, any kind of thing like that can really cause trauma. And then what happens is when you get trauma, there's some nasty side effects, including anxiety, depression, stress, kind of this mental fog. If you've had trauma before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's this terrible mental fog that kind of inhabits your brain and makes it really hard to concentrate and think and kind of snap out of it. There's drug and alcohol abuse is very common. There's a myriad of different things that occur that just make your life really kind of stuck. In fact, the thing that really rings true for me is, as I was doing my research, the best phrase that I saw of all was, when you have trauma, you get stuck there. And there is wherever you were and whatever you were doing and whatever happened when the trauma occurred. Here is today, where all the great things in life that are going on are right here, right now, but you can't be here, you're still stuck there. And it's the hardest thing in the world to get over. It's very, very difficult. And so we were looking for, is there a path, a natural path to get over trauma? So in the course of doing that, I learned something that was shocking to me, because to my understanding, trauma was completely in the mind. It's all in the head, right? But as I did more and more research, I found out that that is not the case, that trauma is in the body. And what happens is that when you experience trauma, your body is doing something for you that through eons and eons has protected it. So the first thing that happens is your body sparks your cortisol. The next thing that happens is that your body will spark your adrenaline. So spiking your cortisol, spiking your adrenaline does two things. One, spiking your cortisol makes you hypervigilant and anxious, and a high level of anxiety and stress. Okay, now what does that do? That turns on your brain and all of your senses so that you can watch things to see if there's any additional risks. And then on top of that, when you spike your adrenaline, you lift your adrenaline up, you've got this energy and this power and this kind of vitality that's going through you. But when it's within the context of increased cortisol, what you have is increased stress. Now at the same time, some very important neurotransmitters are being suppressed by your body. Serotonin for one, GABA is another one, and then also the hormone dopamine is also being suppressed in your body. So at the same time that you're feeling highly anxious and highly stressed, you're also, all your senses of I feel good and everything's okay and everything's going to be all right, those things are being suppressed. And what happens with trauma is that you can get frozen in that point. You can be at that point where it never goes away, where you just get stuck there. And obviously then that leads to all of these different terrible side effects that come along with trauma. So let's talk a little bit about the human body and evolution and things like that. If you believe in a creative narrative, a creation narrative where there was an Adam and an Eve, which is fine, then humans have been around for about 12,000 years. You can also believe in a creation narrative that humans have been around for millions of years. And you can also believe in a non-creation narrative that humans have been around for millions of years. However you cut it or slice it, there's been at least 500 generations of humans on this planet. And if there's been 500 generations of humans on this planet, a process that goes on in nature all the time called natural selection has been happening over and over and over and over again. So if we have trauma, there's a reason why we have trauma. It's because our ancestors, when they had a trauma response of spiked cortisol, of suppressed serotonin, of spiked adrenaline, that was something that helped them survive. That was something that let them react to a really large danger and do something to keep from dying. So that's great, right? We want that, but at the same time then, what that tells us is that we know that if you're in a state of anxiety, stress, depression, over time, that's a really bad thing for survival. It's a terrible thing for survival because what it does is it makes you inadequate and incapable of going out and hunting, interacting with people in a good, solid social way, planting seeds, all of those things that are necessary over time to build yourself up and provide for you and your family. So what do we know then about nature? We know about nature that, one, we have this great reaction that becomes really overbearing and stressful in modern society, which is the trauma reaction to something terrible that's going on. But we also know that within us, we've been programmed and we've been evolved through all those generations. Again, whether you believe in an Adam and Eve creation story all the way back to complete evolution from a singular atom or a single atom organism, no matter how evolution happened or no matter how we got here, there's been tons of generations since the beginning of time which have allowed us to have this natural selection, the survival of the fittest. So this is something that's really powerful within you and it's really strong, and this is the answer to dealing with trauma. You can walk a path, a natural path to dealing with trauma and healing yourself from trauma if you follow this methodology that we've been able to learn. And what it primarily occurs, what primarily happens is when you're following this path, is that there's a number of things that you can do to reduce your cortisol, which is negative, reduce your adrenaline levels, which is giving you this hypersensitivity, this hyper stress, and then lift your serotonin levels, lift your dopamine levels, and lift your GABA levels. And this can be done naturally. It's not hard. It's actually very predictable. If you do certain actions, that these things will happen. And so that's what we've done. We put together this natural path whereby that you can walk this path and deal with your trauma and heal your trauma. So this is video number 1 of the natural path to dealing with trauma. If you also go to paleofreedom.com, you can find all kinds of writings and information, additional videos that we'll be posting. But again, this is video number 1. We'll keep posting them under the Blair McNea channel, and we expect that there's going to be 40 to 50 videos on natural path dealing with trauma to come. In the meantime, I hope you can enjoy the beautiful stuff that, the beautiful Hobcaw Creek that we're looking at right here. We're in the neighborhood from Charleston. Charleston's just over the edge of those trees. Beautiful bay out here. This is the port over here to the right, where Charleston Port's one of the biggest, busiest harbors in the country. So this is video number 1. We hope you come back. We hope you subscribe. We'll be teaching you about all the natural methodologies that you can use to deal with and cure yourself in a natural way from trauma. Thank you very much for joining this video. Appreciate it.